He stood in the parking lot for a long time before he came inside. Donna noticed him through the glass before he even pushed the door open. Noticed the way he squared his shoulders like he was steeling himself for something. The way his sneakers had a crack running along the left sole that let in the November cold. He was young, maybe 19 or 20, with a backpack so stuffed it had given up on zipping and the kind of hollow look behind his eyes that Donna had seen before. It was the look of a person who had been calculating all day, running numbers against a short column of dollars, and who was not entirely sure the numbers worked. She had seen that look a lot, working the lunch and dinner shifts at Carver's Diner for 11 years. He came in and sat at the counter, not a booth, because booths were for people who planned to linger, and he had already decided he was not going to linger. He set the backpack down between his feet and studied the laminated menu with the concentration of a man reading a legal document. His name, Donna would learn later, was Marcus Webb. He was a sophomore at Crestfield University, 4 miles north, on a partial scholarship that covered tuition and nothing else, sharing a one-room apartment with 2 other students who rotated sleeping on the floor, surviving on rice, and a $19 weekly budget for everything that was not rent. He ordered the cheapest thing on the menu, a small order of fries, $1.79. Then he said, "And a water, please," because the water was free. He said it without looking up from the menu, and Donna said, "Sure, hon," and wrote it down on her pad, and neither of them made anything of it. He paid in coins, exact change, counted out on the counter in nickels and dimes, and he did not apologize for the coins the way some people did. He just counted them and pushed them toward her in a neat stack. She brought the fries out in 4 minutes. She had told Lyle, the short order cook who had been back there since before she started, "Big fry on that small order." Lyle had raised an eyebrow. Donna said, "Just do it for me." He did. She buried the extra portion under the top layer so it looked like a normal small, tucked a few more along the side of the bag, and set it down in front of him with a paper napkin and a salt shaker. He did not notice, not right away. He just started eating, 1 fry at a time, slowly, making them last. When he got to the bottom of the bag, he stopped. He looked up at Donna, who was at the far end of the counter refilling coffee for a man in a construction vest. He did not say anything. She did not look at him. He looked back down at the bag, at the extra fries she had buried there, and he was quiet for a moment. When she came back to clear, he was gathering his things to leave. "Thank you," he said. Just that. His voice was level, but there was something in it that she recognized, a particular quality of a person who will not let themselves break in public, who has gotten very practiced at it. "Of course," she said. She picked up the empty bag and moved on. She did not think about it much after that. It was not a grand gesture in her mind, it was a bag of fries. She had done it before for other people, would do it again, had grown up doing it in 100 smaller ways because her own mother had worked 2 jobs for most of Donna's childhood, and Donna had known that hollow look in the face of a person calculating since she was old enough to understand what it meant. It was not charity in her accounting. It was just the ordinary human thing to do, when you could. She forgot his face within a week. If you have ever poured yourself into someone else's need, without keeping a receipt, tell me. Because that is what this story is about. That is the heart of it. Sometimes what we give away in a quiet moment comes back to us in ways that rearrange everything. Stay with this. Marcus did not forget her face. He went back to his apartment that night and ate nothing else because the fries had been enough. More than enough, and because the extra portion she had tucked into his bag had pushed him through an evening study session that lasted until 2 in the morning. He was an accounting major. He had a mind that moved in columns and margins, and he had chosen it not because numbers excited him, but because he had grown up in a house where money was always the emergency, always the edge of the cliff, and he had decided he would learn the language of money so thoroughly that it could never catch him the same way it had caught his mother. He was not the kind of student who studied in the library because the library required him to be quiet, and stillness made him anxious when he was behind on things. He studied at his desk, which was a folding table from a garage sale that wobbled on the left side, in the apartment on Birch Street that had a leak above the bathroom and a radiator that ran either too hot or not at all, and no middle setting between them. He had learned to keep his coat on in October and to sleep on top of the covers in January. He ate a lot of rice with a little hot sauce, and on weeks when the budget stretched, he added a can of beans. And on weeks when it did not, he skipped lunch and made the rice go further. He lost 11 pounds his sophomore year. He did not have a scale, so he knew it by the way his belt tightened past the last hole. and he had to poke a new one with a nail. He never asked his mother for money. He came close once in February of that year when he had 37 cents in his account and a textbook fee due, but he called her on a Sunday and she mentioned that she had picked up an extra cleaning job on Saturdays and sounded tired in a way that stopped him. And he said instead, "I'm doing great, Mom." And he meant it as a statement of intent rather than a current fact. And she said, "I know you are, baby." And that was that. He got through it. He always got through it. He found a tutoring job in the math department that paid $9 an hour and took every hour they would give him. He sold plasma twice a month. He found that the campus dining hall sometimes had surplus at 8:45 on Friday nights just before close, and that if you showed up with a container and asked the right person politely, sometimes they would fill it rather than throw it away. He wrote that down in his notebook too. Friday, 8:45, side door, ask for Marcus or Ray. His mother, Gail Webb, had worked the front desk of a medical office in Columbus, Ohio for 16 years. She had done everything right. She had saved. She had sent Marcus to school on what she saved, plus the scholarship, plus the money she made on weekends cleaning houses. And she had done it without complaining, and without drama, and without asking him to feel guilty, which only made him feel guiltier. He called her every Sunday. He never told her about the rice or the $20 weeks or the cracked sneaker because there was nothing she could do about it, and because she would do something anyway, and he would not let her. He kept a notebook in those years, not a journal exactly, more of a log. He wrote down things he observed, places that ran well, places that did not, the small operational details that most people walk past without seeing. He had started doing it partly as an assignment in a management class during his freshman year, and had kept on because it focused his mind and because the act of writing something down made it real in a way that just thinking about it did not. Carver's Diner appeared in the notebook. He wrote, "Counter service, efficient, clean, solid margins on the breakfast hour based on turn time. Woman working the counter knows her regulars by name. That matters." Then he went back and added a line below it, in smaller handwriting. "Ran big on a small order without being asked or acknowledging it. Did not make anything of it. Best operations tend to be run by people who do the right thing automatically." He went back twice more that semester, when he could afford it. Once for the same order, the small fries and the water, a Tuesday in December when he had made it through his third exam, and rewarded himself with the walk across town, sitting at the same counter stool, watching the same practiced rhythms of a counter that knew what it was doing. Donna didn't remember him, would have had no particular reason to, but she brought the same quality of attention she brought to everyone. The second time, near finals, he had a little more in his account, and ordered the grilled cheese to go with the fries, and Donna, who again did not remember him specifically, but who noticed the backpack and the careful way he unfolded his dollar bills, gave him extra pickles without being asked. It was a small thing. He wrote that down too. He wrote, "It is a habit here, not a calculation. The best service always is." He graduated in 3.5 years, taking extra coursework each semester so he could finish faster and stop the drain on his mother's savings. He graduated with a 3.8 GPA and a letter of distinction from the accounting department, and he went to work for a regional investment firm in Cleveland, starting as an analyst, the lowest rung, making $41,000 a year, which was more money than he had ever seen at once, and which he managed with the discipline of a person who had learned to count nickels. He rented a studio apartment and bought a bed frame and a real desk, not a folding table, and he stood in the middle of his apartment on the first night and was quiet for a while. It was not a big apartment, but there was no leak above the bathroom. The radiator had a thermostat. He called his mother and said, "I got the place set up," she said. "You eating?" He said, "Mom, I'm eating." He ate. He ate a real breakfast every morning before work, the kind with eggs and toast, because he had decided, in the apartment on Birch Street, that when he had a salary, the first thing he would do was eat a real breakfast every morning, and he did. He did not forget where he came from, he just stopped letting where he came from run the numbers on him. In 7 years, he moved twice and was recruited 3 times and ended up at a private equity group in Cincinnati that did acquisitions. Small to mid-sized companies, he developed a specialty in food service and hospitality because he understood the margins intuitively, understood where waste lived in a restaurant operation, understood the difference between a place that was dying from bad management and a place that was dying from bad luck, and the two were not the same. The food service specialty had not been a plan exactly. It had developed the way most of his instincts developed, from observation and from memory. He had eaten in enough places on a thin budget to know what it felt like to be on the customer side of a counter that was run well versus one that was not, and he had a researcher's habit of noting what he saw. He could walk into a diner and feel the operation within 20 minutes, could feel whether throughput was clogged, where labour was misallocated, where the menu had gotten too ambitious for the kitchen's real speed. He knew what a well-run short-order kitchen sounded like. He knew what indifferent ownership smelled like. He was 31 when his firm asked him to lead a portfolio he had been quietly building for 2 years. 9 full-service diners across the Ohio River Valley, acquired piece by piece, rehabbed on the inside, and run under a unified management structure that he had designed himself. The portfolio was called Heartline Hospitality. It was worth, at current valuation, a little over $4 million, and he owned 38% of it. He had not told his mother the full picture yet. He was going to that Christmas. The portfolio had 8 diners in it. He was looking at the 9th when he pulled up the listing one Tuesday in October and saw the address and went still. Carver's Diner, 1140 Mill Street, Crestfield. He stared at it for a while. He had not been back to Crestfield since graduation. The town was 4 miles from the university, and he had no particular reason to return. No family there, no friends who had stayed. But the street address sat in his memory, without him having known it was there, the way some things do. He knew the linoleum pattern. He knew the sound the counter stools made when you swiveled. He knew that the coffee was better in the morning than in the afternoon, and that the booths got cold air from the front door in winter. He also knew the margin signature of a diner that had been running on good intentions and thin capitalization for too long. The listing told the story the numbers always tell. 11 years of flat revenue, 2 ownership changes in the last 6, lease renewal coming up in 8 months, margins thin, lunch traffic down 40% from its 2015 peak, equipment aging. The place was not failing dramatically. It was failing quietly the way a lot of good places did, not from scandal or collapse, just from time and a changing street and not enough capital to refresh what had gotten old. He pulled the financial file and sat with it that evening in his apartment, not in the office. He didn't always do his thinking in the office. He did his clearest thinking at home, alone, with the numbers spread across his desk the way he had always done it, going back to the folding table in the apartment on Birch Street. The numbers said it was a viable acquisition. The bones of the place were solid. The location had upside as the street developed. The equipment could be refreshed for a predictable capital outlay, and a management infusion would address the throughput problems that were showing up in the revenue trend. He had seen worse turnarounds. He had done worse turnarounds. He sat there for 3 days. Then he called his contact at the brokerage and said he was interested. He did the site visit on a Thursday morning in November, alone, without assistance. He wore jeans and a plain coat and came in through the front door at 8:15 in the morning, when the breakfast rush was at its thickest. He sat at the counter as he always had, out of habit, or something deeper than habit. The laminated menus were the same, he noticed. The ceiling tiles had a new water stain in the northwest corner. The coffee was still good. He had been there 15 minutes when he looked up and saw the woman behind the counter. She was in her mid-40s, heavier now than the memory he had held without knowing he was holding it. Her hair shorter, a pair of reading glasses she had not worn before pushed up on her forehead. She moved with the same economy he remembered, efficient and unhurried, balancing 3 mugs and a ketchup bottle in a single pass. He watched her for a moment. She came to him with a pad. "What can I get you, hun?" He ordered coffee and the breakfast platter. He watched her work the counter for the next 30 minutes, watched the way she remembered who had asked for extra syrup and who was in a hurry and who just wanted to sit. Watched the way she tilted her head when she talked to the old man in the corner booth, taking an extra second she did not technically have. When she brought the check, he looked at her name tag. Donna. He said, "How long have you worked here?" She set the check holder down. "Oh, going on 14 years now." "Were you here around 2012, 2013? She tilted her head. "Yeah. Started in 2010. A pause. "Why?" He looked down at the check for a moment. The diner moved around them in its ordinary rhythm. A couple in the far booth paid and stood. The bell above the pass-through rang twice. From the kitchen he could hear Lyle's grill going, a steady low sizzle that had probably been going for decades. He looked back up at her. "I used to come in sometimes. Broke college kid, big backpack. I could only afford the small fries. She studied his face with the expression of a woman searching a long file. And one time, he said, the person working the counter gave me extra fries. Just tucked them in the bag, didn't say anything about it. I was pretty hungry that day. He paused. That was you, wasn't it? Donna was quiet for a moment. She looked at him the way people look when they are trying to match a young face to an older one, when they are sorting through years of counters and orders and faces to find a particular one. I do that sometimes, she said carefully. I can't say I'd remember a specific time. I know, he said. I didn't expect you to. He left a $40 bill for a $12 check, which made her pause when she found it. She looked up to say something, but he was already at the door, buttoning his coat, stepping out into the November cold without hurrying, just a man who had seen what he had come to see. He came back in 6 weeks. This time he came with a portfolio folder and asked to see whoever was responsible for operations. The manager, a tired-looking man named Phil, who had been running the place for 2 years on a shoestring, came out from the back wiping his hands on a towel. Phil had the particular expression of a person who has been managing on hope and instinct, and is very tired of both, and who looks at a stranger in a good coat with a portfolio folder with the wary attention of someone who cannot decide yet if this is rescue or a different kind of trouble. Marcus introduced himself and told Phil who he was and what his firm did. He said he was serious about acquiring Carver's Diner as part of a hospitality group, that he had the financing in place, and that he had specific ideas for the rehab that he wanted to walk through. Phil sat down. They talked for an hour. Marcus asked a lot of questions and Phil answered most of them honestly, which Marcus registered because the operators who hedged their answers were almost always hiding something in the P&L that would surface later. Phil was not hiding anything. Phil was just tired, and the numbers bore that out, and the story they told was the story Marcus had read in the listing and confirmed with his own eyes over 2 breakfast visits, a good place that needed a different set of hands. Marcus came back twice more, with his operations director the second time and his attorney the third. The deal took 11 weeks to close, which was fast for an acquisition of this size, and when it was done, Carver's Diner passed into Heartline Hospitality's portfolio at a price that cleared the outgoing owner's debt and left a small surplus. Phil had shaken Marcus's hand at the closing and said, "Take care of it," and Marcus had said, "That's the plan," and meant it in both the commercial sense and in the other sense, the one that did not translate to a balance sheet. On the first day that Heartline had operational control, Marcus drove down from Cincinnati alone. He walked into the diner at 7 in the morning. Donna was already there, setting up the counter for the breakfast rush, turning over coffee mugs, restocking the sugar caddies, moving with the same practiced efficiency he had noted in his notebook a dozen years ago. She looked up when he came in. "We're not open yet," she said. "I know," he said. "I wanted to catch you before the rush." He set his coat on the counter stool. "I'm Marcus Webb. I'm the new owner." Donna set down the mug she was holding. She looked at him for a moment, the full, patient look of a woman who did not waste her attention on first impressions, and also did not dismiss them. He was watching her carefully. "I know this is a lot to take in," he said. "I want you to know that none of the staff is being let go. The plan is to invest in this place, not gut it." He paused. "And I was hoping you'd be willing to talk with me about the operation because you know this counter better than anyone." She was very still. "You're the same man who was in here a couple weeks back." "Yes." "And before that, the college kid." "Yes." She absorbed this for a moment. Outside, on Mill Street, a delivery truck was pulling in front of the building next door, and its backing alarm came through the glass in a thin, repeating tone. She watched Marcus the way she watched people she was still making up her mind about. "Why'd you buy it?" she said. It was a direct question, and he gave it a direct answer. "A few reasons. The location is undervalued. The foot traffic has room to grow. The equipment needs updating, but the bones are good." He stopped. "And because I ate at this counter when I had nothing, and the person who worked it was decent to me. And I figured that deserved something." Donna was quiet for a long moment. The morning light came through the front windows and caught the worn linoleum and the old coffee urns and the new water stain that nobody had fixed yet. She looked around the room, the way you look at a room you know well and are suddenly seeing from a different angle. "You're talking about some fries," she said. "I'm talking about more than the fries," he said. though the fries were also good. She made a sound that was not quite a laugh and not quite a cry, somewhere in the space between them. They started renovations in January. New equipment in the kitchen, starting with the grill and the fryer, because those were the throughput constraints showing up most clearly in the ticket times. A refreshed dining room that kept the original layout, the counter stools, the red vinyl, the long row of windows, because Marcus had specifically told his operations director that he was not interested in making it look like something it was not. The ceiling tiles were replaced. The leak above the northeast corner was tracked to a flashing problem on the roof and fixed at the source. The lease was renegotiated at a favourable rate that gave Heartline 5 years of stability. A modest patio was added on the east side for the spring and summer months. 12 tables, string lights, a potted boxwood hedge that Donna would later confess she had ordered herself and charged to the renovation budget because she felt the space needed something green. Marcus had seen the invoice and called her. $40 hedge, she said before he could speak. I saw it. The patio looked institutional without it. A pause. Does it look institutional now? No, she said. All right, he said. Donna stayed on through all of it. She had managed the staff through the renovation weeks, keeping morale steady when the dining room was closed and people were worried about their hours, communicating what was happening and why, making sure the kitchen crew understood that the new equipment was not a replacement of them, but a resource for them. When a young line cook named Terrell asked her, in the parking lot during a break, if he should be looking for another job, she said, "If you leave, I will be annoyed with you, personally. Stay." He stayed. He became, within 6 months of the reopening, the fastest ticket man on the line, and Lyle grudgingly said so. The diner ran well that first year. Revenue was up 63% by the end of month 8, not because anything flashy had happened, but because the kitchen was faster, the coffee was better, the bathrooms were clean, and Donna knew every regular by name and made sure the new staff learned them too. Marcus came down from Cincinnati one weekend a month and ate at the counter and talked to Donna about what was working and what was not. And Donna was direct with him in a way that he had specifically asked her to be. Told him when a new menu item was not landing. Told him when the afternoon staffing was thin. Told him when a vendor was slow. She had been told in her life by more than one person that she spoke her mind too plainly. She had decided somewhere around year 6 of working the counter that this was not a defect. Marcus, for his part, had learned a long time ago that the most valuable information in any operation lived with the people doing the daily work, not in the spreadsheets. He had learned it in part from a management professor and in part from 11 years of watching operations quietly from the customer side of the counter. He had a good ear. He used it. Before the renovation was complete, Marcus had asked Donna if she would be willing to take on the role of floor manager, which came with a wage increase and health coverage, and a title she could put on paper. She had looked at him steadily for a moment before she answered. "I don't want a pity job," she said. "I'm not offering one," he said. "I need someone who knows this room, that's you, and I've watched you work a counter for 3 hours across 2 visits. You're the best person in this building at what you do." She agreed. He flew his mother down from Columbus for the reopening in March. Gail Webb sat at the counter in her good coat and ate the breakfast platter and ordered a second cup of coffee and sat for a long time looking at the room. The new lights and the old stools and the red vinyl that was the same and the ceiling tiles that were not. She said, "Marcus, this is something," he said. "Yeah, Mom, it is." That was the whole conversation, because they had always understood each other in the small economies of language, the same way they had always understood each other in the small economies of money. The reopening was on a Saturday. The line was out the door by 8:30. Lyle was still in the kitchen. He had been back there since before Donna started, had been the one who had raised an eyebrow when Donna told him to run a big fry on a small order 12 years ago. He was still raising his eyebrows at things, and his hash browns were still the best on the street. And Marcus had shaken his hand on the first day of Heartline Control and said, "I heard the kitchen was solid. Now I know why." Lyle had allowed himself one small nod of acknowledgement and gone back to the grill. Has someone ever done something small for you, so small they didn't even remember it, but you carried it for years? That is what I want you to think about today. Drop it in the comments, because this is a story about how those things travel. On the 1-year anniversary of the reopening, he came down on a Saturday and brought his mother again, and after the breakfast rush, he sat with Donna at the counter and they had coffee together. The diner was quieter at mid-morning. the way it always got between the breakfast and lunch pushes, and the light coming through the east windows was soft and long and fell across the worn linoleum in the way that Donna had always thought was the diner's best hour, the hour when it looked most like itself. He had a folder with him. He set it on the counter between them. "I want to offer you a steak," he said. 5% of this location. It's not charity, it's deferred compensation that I should have structured into the original deal. You built this place's reputation and you keep it running. You should have a piece of it." Donna looked at the folder. She looked at him. She was quiet for a long moment, the kind of quiet that was not hesitation exactly, but more a person waiting until they were sure of their own voice. "I don't know anything about owning part of a business," she said. "You know everything about running this one," he said. "I'll handle the ownership mechanics. You keep doing what you're doing." She looked at the folder again. She had not touched it yet. "Why now?" she said. "Because it took me a year to be certain enough," he said. "I didn't want to make a gesture. I wanted to make a decision. Those are different things." She considered this. She had always respected precision in language, had always found it more honest than warmth, and this was precise. "You know what I remember," she said. "When I think about that day, I remember I told Lyle to run a big fry on a small order, and he looked at me like I was wasting product." She paused. $1 worth of potatoes." $1 worth of potatoes, he agreed. She pressed her lips together. She was not a woman who cried easily. She had worked the service industry for 14 years and had learned to keep herself level in public, learned to save the harder feelings for later and alone. She kept herself level now. Her eyes were bright, and Marcus saw it, and he looked down at his coffee to give her the moment. She pulled the folder toward her and opened it. There are things people do when no one is keeping score. Small additions, tucked kindnesses, the extra portions slipped into the bag of someone who does not have enough, not because it will be remembered or returned, but because it is simply the right thing to do with whatever small surplus you happen to have. The world overlooks those things mostly. The world is busy and the margins of generosity are quiet and unremarkable, and the people who live there go unnoticed for years at a time. The world keeps a longer ledger than most people know. Donna Reeves signed the papers on a Tuesday morning in March, in the office that used to belong to Phil and now belonged to the Heartline Hospitality Operations team, with Lyle as the only witness because he had been standing in the hallway and Marcus had pulled him in. Lyle signed his name with the careful deliberateness of a man who did not sign things very often, and then he went back to his grill without ceremony because he had eggs to flip, and the breakfast crowd was not going to wait. Donna walked back out to the counter and put on her apron. She refilled the coffee for the man in the corner booth, the one who came in every Tuesday and always ordered the same thing and always said, "Thank you kindly," in the same slow way. She reset the sugar caddy at the far end. She ran a clean cloth down the counter. Her name was on something now, in a small way, but in a real way. A piece of a thing that had stood on this corner for a long time and was going to keep standing. She did not say anything about it to anyone for the rest of the morning. It did not seem like the kind of thing that needed saying out loud. Marcus drove back to Cincinnati that afternoon. On the way, he called his mother. "How was it?" Gail asked. "Good," he said. "Really good. Did you eat?" "Mom." "I'm serious. You go all the way down there and work yourself to death." "I ate," he said. "I had the breakfast platter." "Good. I gave Donna the steak today," he said. A pause. His mother knew the shape of what he had been planning, had known it for months, and had said, when he first mentioned it, "You know what you're doing," which was her way of blessing it without hovering, and her way of trusting him without needing to say so directly. "How did she take it?" Gail asked. "The way she does everything," he said. "Careful, then straight." His mother made a sound that was not a word. He heard the warmth in it. He drove for a while in the quiet between them. The highway ran flat and grey under the November sky. The kind of sky that was not quite winter yet, but was no longer anything else. Colourless and high, the kind of sky Ohio gets in the weeks before the cold locks in. He had been calculating numbers since he was old enough to understand what they meant. He had run the numbers on that Tuesday morning long ago, the $1.79, and the coins stacked neat on the counter, and the bag that felt heavier than it should have when he picked it up, and he had carried that number in a column in the back of his mind for 12 years, the way a person carries a debt they intend to repay. He had repaid it, as best he knew how. Not with drama, not with a ceremony or a declaration, not with a speech about what the thing had meant, with a folder on a counter and a cup of coffee, and a conversation between two people who did not need to say more than what the moment required. The simplest things were often the most accurate. He thought about what his mother had always told him from when he was small. She used to say it at the dinner table and in the car and at the end of phone calls, the same simple principle that you could not always control what you received, but you could always control what you gave away, and that the giving away was never wasted, not really, not if you did it from the right place, not the place that wanted something back or expected to be remembered, the place that simply knew it was the right thing to do with whatever you had available. He had believed her then. He believed her more now. "Call me when you get home," she said. "I will, Mom." He merged onto the interstate and turned the radio up a little and let the miles go by, the evening pressing in from the east, the temperature falling, the first faint suggestions of snow showing up as pale streaks in the headlights of the cars ahead. Back at 1140 Mill Street, the signing had happened on a Tuesday morning some weeks earlier, the paperwork completed in the back office, and now on this particular afternoon, Donna moved the length of the counter as she had always moved it, pad in hand, the familiar orbit of someone who knows a room the way a person knows a place they have decided to be. She knew which stool wobbled and where the draft came from in winter, and which regular wanted their coffee before they sat down, and which one wanted to be left alone until they were ready. She knew this room. She passed the spot at the end of the counter where a young man had once sat with a cracked sneaker and a backpack that would not zip, counting out coins in a neat stack. She paused there for just a moment in the way of someone who has passed a place many times and is only now choosing to mark it, one clear moment of acknowledgement before moving on. She set her hand on the counter for just a second, feeling the worn laminate, and then lifted it and kept going because the man in the far booth was lifting his cup and she had a job to do, and she was good at it. Some things come back around. Not always, and not fast, and not in the shape you would expect. $1 worth of potatoes tucked under a paper napkin on a Tuesday in November does not look like anything. It does not announce itself. It does not keep records or expect return. It just sits there in the bag, ordinary and warm, while the person who put it there moves on to the next table, and the next, and does not look back. She poured the coffee. She smiled at the man in the booth. Through the front windows, Mill Street moved in its ordinary November rhythm, and the diner held its corner the way it always had, solid and worn, and full of the particular warmth that belongs to a room where people have been fed and steadied for a long time. That was enough. It had always been enough. If this story stayed with you, leave a word in the comments, and if you want another one just like it, there is one waiting. Stay close.